Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tabletop Almanac. My name is Simon, and in this episode, I am reviewing Vampire the Masquerade Mind's Eye Theater from By Night Studios. Now, I will be upfront, I have not LARPed in a long time, but it was basically my primary means of accessing the world of darkness, especially Vampire the Masquerade, for at least a decade. Most of my teenage years, and definitely, well, yeah, all throughout high school, basically, and a little bit after that, and then a few forays now and again. But, you know, uh, things sometimes make it difficult to continue in it. Sometimes you can't find a group, you move around, and so on and so forth. It is an investment, but I have a lot of fond memories of it. And so it definitely is something that I always kind of like to keep my eye on. Now, the opinions in this episode are entirely mine. Content was provided for the purpose of review by Night Studios, to which I thank them greatly. And yeah, all the opinions are always mine, like honestly, but still good to say it. Okay. So I'm going to cover a few things here because how I got sort of looking into this again was a tweet a while ago, longer than I wanted it to be, of what do you want Vampire the Masquerade to have, which it doesn't have right now. And I responded with clan pins because when I was a youth and going to game stores and just kind of looking at the corner of my eye what this vampire was about, right up at the cache, there were these display boards with these clan pins. They were the symbols of the clans, and you could put them on your trench coat or whatever vampiric garb you happen to be wearing, and display your allegiance to one clan or the other. And it was just kind of fun, right? And when we got them, we would trade them amongst us when we were playing different clans and so on and so forth. And so I got told that, in fact, By Night Studios was still producing these, and you could get them through them. So that was why I reached out. And well, they're pretty cool. Now they are a mix, sometimes of old and V5 versions of the symbols. This here is the Ventrue clan. It's the old one. It's just a scepter, mace, scepter, not the crossed gladius one. I kind of like that one, but this one's cool too, and definitely nice and nostalgic. The Tremere. Yeah. This is the V5 one, I'm pretty sure. It's been a little, I don't have it immediately retained, but then the Lasombra. This is the new one because it has that cross in the middle. I was always a big fan of the the L seal, because that was what I first saw with the Lasombra in second edition. And the best clan in the game is the one that stuck with me. But this one's still cool. It definitely has that like regal thing going for them that they have without being too ostentatious. And it has that church connection there too that like they're fond of. And then definitely new the Hecata. I'm a fan of the Giovanni for God's only know what reason, because they're the most morally bankrupt people you'll ever come across. But the Hecata I think is just such a great idea, and I'm a big fan of that clan. That's one of the best parts of V5 for me, and in no small part because I am on record on the blog as saying that Cults of the Blood God is a book that made me want to get back into Vampire the Masquerade. This is after the core book. This is after whatever else. But I read that one and just thought, I had that feeling of what it was like when I was reading this when I first got into it. And yeah, again, kudos to Onyx Path for their work on that one. Okay, so those are the cool clan pins. And then one of the things I always found tough, especially operating on a teenager's budget, was costuming. And By Night Studios does have a lot of sort of accessories that can go with it. So here are a couple. This is a cool moon, full moon pendant. Um, it's a metal chain with a metal ring and essentially a glass marble. I think it might be two pieces, but it has a picture of the moon inside, which is a two-dimensional picture. But it's a costume piece. I think it works really well. And then this one's awesome. The Seal of Solomon, and I did confirm with the internets as to the accuracy of what it looks like, and it looks pretty accurate. I didn't go down to the fine detail, but anyway, that's cool for your Tremere or your thaumaturgists or whomever. So they have some cool stuff like that. Definitely check those out there. They're certainly worth what you're after. And then there's this. It's a journal with a nice little clasp here, which opens it up and unfolds it into this. Hold on. There we are. One page fell out. But apart from that, I've had it for a little bit. It is 5 bound cloth pages to go in there. So whatever you're writing in there, be mindful of how it absorbs because it might bleed through. I think it's pretty cool. It's a nice, fun little thing that you could carry around with you in game or as a GM, storyteller, whatever. You could take notes in it for like the vampire game of all vampire games because you're, of course, only going to use it for something that epic. The pictures make the red thing here, and I can't tell if it looks all that different to you, a little more translucent, like it's one of those glass beads. It's not. It's a plastic one, and it's fully opaque. It does kind of get that blood thing across, but I kind of think it might have looked a little bit better if it wore that translucent one. Only because it would look a little more jewel like. Here it does kind of look a little plastic, but overall, this is a pretty cool prop to have. And finally, one of the things about LARP that's awesome is how it's that rock, paper, scissors thing again, because that is easier than hunkering down and rolling dice. But then it's also draws less attention from everybody around you. And at least when I played, we wanted to draw as little attention as possible. So you play rock, paper, scissors, right? And the test would be adjudicated by whoever won. And then if you tied, you compared your respective strengths in that kind of challenge. And whoever the higher one won. And then you pulled out various abilities that you retest and do it again, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things I remember is that there were people who are really good at rock, paper, scissors. I am not necessarily one of them. And so I tried to avoid testing whenever possible. Didn't always happen. And it was that sort of thing where if you suck at rock, paper, scissors, then it kind of throws a bit of the character. Like, even if stats wise, you're supposed to be awesome, like dice are dice, right? And you can only really roll them in your favor if you're cheating. But rock, paper, scissors, it's more obvious when someone is cheating, so it's easier to prove it. Whereas dice, it's a little harder, so you just kind of go through it and so on and so forth. But one way or another, I find it's easier to be really good at rock, paper, scissors and have someone be really bad at it, and then that skew a whole lot of stuff. So here are 3 metal cards. These are actually for their changeling ones. You can see that cool moth on the back, but there are also vampire ones. And they have, right side up, a rock, paper, and scissors on them. And so all you have to do is pick the one you want, put it behind your back, and then go, I picked this. A lot fewer tells with this sort of thing. I almost want to play a LARP session with them just so I can prove to myself that I'm right on that and that they are a superior method to doing it. It also draws a lot less attention, and it's just they're metal cards, so they're super durable. And they come in little plastic sleeves, so you can avoid scratches and things like that. And they come in these nice little cases. But you can definitely carry those around for the most part. regardless of your costume as a player, you're probably going to have your phone or something like that. And so whatever you're carrying that in can probably fit those cards. So those are some sort of a look at some of the props that you can get from By Night Studios that I would say would definitely enhance your game. Okay, so on to the actual product itself. And this is maybe a little bit out of date in the sense that I know there's been a Kickstarter for the new Laws of the Night. One, I think that's great because it's an awesome name and it deserves to come back. Having that little sort of marble patterned gray book that got so beat up as I carried it around was fantastic to have. So calling it Laws of the Night, excellent. But this is what was going on before that. This is the Mind's Eye Theater Vampire the Masquerade. This is the limited edition. It is a really heavy book. And so this is probably the sort of thing that the storytellers are going to have on a dais, on some sort of lectern during the game that they and only they refer to after washing their hands. It has these great cloth bookmarks in it. Hold on. There you are. Cloth bookmarks, I think, should be a given. Okay, so that's unfair because not everyone can afford that sort of thing. If you can get fit cloth bookmarks in one of these, then that's great. I love when I get cloth bookmarks in it, especially when they're multiple in a book. So the production value, even if you were to take away the, I assume, leatherette cover, it's still really good. The art does seem to be entirely models, but they have been sort of touched up and altered and such. And so they do look like they are art as well, not just people dressed up. And the book does not cover V5 because V5 wasn't out when this came out. But what it does do is it gives you a really, really good look at what Mind's Eye Theater Vampire the Masquerade is. What to expect, what vampire is. In fact, you could probably use this as a core book for the game, even sitting around the table. It's that thorough. There are definitely differences since I first played Laws of the Night. Oh yeah, so if you're a Metaplot person, this does include the Red Star and the Week of Nightmares. I think it goes up to Gehenna, but then it doesn't do V5, like I said. So if you are a Metaplot themed, this is a good overview for you, and it covers a portion of the world. It covers the clans. There are some neat things where there are definitely clan only merits, and one of the things I think is cool is that bloodlines for a clan are a merit as well. So if you want to be a Samite Vizier, it's a merit. If you want to be a sorcerer, it's a merit, and that changes your starting disciplines and things like that. I'm going to try to I'm sort of going to talk to you as if you know about Vampire the Masquerade to begin with. Otherwise, this will be a really long video. One of the things that okay, hold on. It's either here or it's a little later on. They don't take a lot of space for each of the clans, and that's fine. There are clan books. There are other books to get into. There's the internet. You can definitely find what you need to on each of these, but it's comprehensive. It covers all of them. So and it covers the bloodlines, right? So Cappadocians have Samedi, Lamia, even the Losambre have the Angelos Ater. You've got a lot of choices here. Okay, so character creation for the storyteller. And one of the things I really like here is that it gives a lot of advice for a storyteller. And storytelling a LARP is worlds different from storytelling for a table. If you haven't done it, then you can't really talk about it. And if you know, it's one of those things. You are managing people on a scale that you are not used to at tabletop. I mean, probably not. You're unlikely to have 20 players at a time. You might in the old days, maybe you did. But 20 players, all of whom you have to help keep engaged to an extent and help foster plots that their characters would be interested in and help adjudicate the plots that they create amongst themselves. It is a lot of work. So the more advice you can get, the better. And one of the things I do like is that they include discussion about what to allow in the game and rarity of certain clans and bloodlines, causing them to be required to spend merit points to get them. It's a neat little thing to have, and it's a way of keeping the rare rare. One thing difference between tabletop and LARP that I've always found is that uh, especially if you came from LARP, you when you're creating your city or populating it, you might be tempted to try to make sure everything is covered, right? Uh, and that your players might be like, "Oh, I want to play a gargoyle." Say, and you're like, "Gargoyles are super rare. You can't play that. Give me a good reason why you should play that." But on tabletop, that's not a good response in my mind. Those PCs sitting at the table or virtual table or whatever are the focus of the chronicle. So if someone wants to play a gargoyle, unless you think it's a terrible idea and really wouldn't fit with it, work and try to find a way to make it viable. Um, but in a LARP, it is different because you do have to account for a demographic of people, and you can't have everyone playing an old clan Jamesi. You can't have everyone playing a gargoyle. They can't all be Setites. I mean, maybe they can. I played in an Ultramir game before, but point being is that um, no one or no group of people in that LARP should be more important or be allowed more toys than anyone else. So by saying, you know what, I want to keep gargoyles rare, I want to keep the harbingers of skulls out of the game entirely. Um, they do give sort of guidelines on setting it up so that there's a mechanical support to that. Okay. Things that I do like about this version of Mind's Eye Theater is that I think it's a lot, not more forgiving, but it's a lot more viable to make a notable, significant character in this that is not failing every damn test. And that's because um, you're still doing rock, paper, scissors. And if you lose, you lose. And if you win, you win. But then how much you win by, you're comparing your ratings because you, much like tabletop, have a character sheet that's very similar to the tabletop sheet in terms of dots in skills and abilities and attributes and things like that, which then give you a total that you can then add together to defeat a static target number or work in an opposed test. And you'll reference those whether or not you tie, which I think is pretty cool. But if you do really well, you get an exceptional success. Whereas before, it was just a whole lot of like I said before, people winning rock, paper, scissors and you running out of resources to retest. And then finally, you're just drained of everything and you get taken down. Nothing wrong with that if that's the scope of it, but I'd like this system a bit better for it. Okay. When I say that like this has everything, it literally has everything. It has all the disciplines. It has all the clans. It has all these merits, all these one that let you fine tune your vampire to your dead heart's content, which is great to have it all together. And like I said, you could run this as a tabletop system just as easily. You might, in fact, enjoy it that way. By everything, it also includes paths of enlightenment, which come across as merit points. And the way they change things is that they change when you gain a beast trait when performing a sin. And what the criteria are for not. So, for example, the path of heaven You do not gain beast traits when performing a sin as long as you commit that sin while actively following the precepts and commandments of your faith. That's easy. You don't need a whole new hierarchy of sins for that necessarily. You can stick with the other one and then just say, but it doesn't count when you are doing this because you are an inhuman creature with a whole other sense of morality. Um, and there are a lot of them in here. Most of them, I think. Not every, I don't think everyone, but quite a few. Okay, so there are flaws. Okay, well, let's look a little bit. By chapter 6 is when you get into the core systems. Not a surprising order of things for a World of Darkness related book. Haha. Okay, so you have static and opposed challenges. Static are tests against the storyteller, against a fixed target number, and opposed are against the player or NPC. And there are difficulty ratings. 5 is easy, like climbing a ladder. 8 is standard, climbing a ladder during a chase. 15 is difficult. Ooh, add rain. And it goes from there. And so what happens is you add your attribute, your skill, a wild card bonus, which is anything from equipment, other characters supporting you, merits, disciplines, environment, and that equals your test pool. So then you perform rock, paper, scissors. If you win outright, you compare the test pool to the challenge's difficulty, and if it's greater than the difficulty rating, you get an exceptional success. If you tie, you compare your test pool to the challenge's difficulty rating, and if it's greater, then you just succeed. Otherwise, you fail, and if, of course, you lose, you fail. So you have 2 chances to succeed here, but they are dependent on your ability scores, and that is fantastic. Again, I mean, LARP is one of the ones where it can be not harder. You have to work more with the suspension of disbelief because everyone's costuming, and it is tough sometimes to be like, what, you're your old European nobility wearing cutoff jeans and a sleeveless t-shirt? Maybe, depending on the character. But if they then have like a label that says wearing an Armani suit, you're like, okay, you're wearing an Armani suit. It's just a difference in style between games and live action versus tabletop, but it is still something to note. And then you do get retest options and so on and so forth. What is nice is when you are doing an opposed challenge, you have to define the challenge and your victory condition, and you have to agree on that. It has to fit with the continuity, and the target player or the storyteller has to agree on it. And that can be just, my condition is I grapple you, or I use a discipline successfully. Maybe it feels like an extra step. It's one of those ones that will definitely get easier as it goes on, but it's a way to be very clear about what you're after here, rather than just, I hit him, I dominate him, I intimidate him. Okay. All right. I'm not teaching you how to play the game, so we're not going to dig too deeply into that. But that is some of what I definitely noticed as not being what I used to do. In terms of comprehensiveness, this even includes mass combat, which, we had mass combat. Mass combat sucked, so it's nice to have it clearly addressed. And then, like I said, you've got rules for ghouls and other things like that, but it definitely covers everything that Masquerade requires. Because it's a LARP, it also has downtime activities. You have actions that you can take between games, and there's a system for it. Huzzah! How sects work, status traits, things like that. Gestures and hand signals. No, this is, I'm not role playing. This is out of character. We used to do that, or sometimes this, to indicate that. This is now you can't see me. We used to do both. I grant you willpower. I look like someone else. Now you might want to tag for that because eventually you might get tired of holding your hand there all night long. But these are handy to have. So I'm glad that they have the pictures and the signs here. Okay. Well, I did talk about storytelling and how massively supportive the book is here. Good thing to have here. And I do recall when this came out, this was sort of this would have been a little bit ahead of its time, but not for LARP. One of the things that I always remember was the rules of don't touch anybody. You can't touch anybody. It's not okay. Because you wanted to have a safe game. So there are guidelines on metagaming, rules layers, disruptive players, overly competitive players, intentionally disruptive players, and so on. And then also how to create an inclusive game. Though it did at times not always achieve what it needed to, and sometimes it is a little out of date in a number of areas. The World of Darkness games were always seemed to be at the forefront of being inclusive and acknowledging the myriad of people that exist out in the world. So it is nice to talk about this here. They talk about how to. Okay. One of the tricky things about LARP. I personally don't, tabletop or LARP, don't include much in the way of sexual content in any of my games. Because I find it silly. Other people totally, if you do you with your game, not a problem here. I find it to sometimes maybe skew a bit too into that old stereotype of, teenage boys gaming in the basement, her, super socially awkward around anyone they might be attracted to. And so like cheesecake art and exploitative stuff. When it comes to LARP, if you are playing a seductive character, which unless the guidelines say otherwise, you have that option. And because you're playing vampires, that's also part of it. It's worth them talking about it here, and they do, and about being an active participant, because you don't have to be involved in that if you don't want to. And it's really nice to have something like that printed out. It's one of those things you feel like it shouldn't have to be, but you know what? Unfortunately, it does. And LARP, you can't really, you can go like, do something at tabletop. Okay, my character seduces you. How? I don't know this. And it can be very dull and blasé. But some people might get too into it. And this is a good reminder that that's not an okay thing if, again, they don't have consent of everyone involved. I don't mean to harp on that necessarily, but vampires being the creatures that they are, I think is really important that it does show up in the book. Okay. There's a lot of how to set up your city and different rituals and celebrations that all the sects have. There's stuff on revenants. The revenant families pop up here. How to handle setting specific mechanics. Like I said, that's part of rarity of clans or merits and flaws and things like that. Very handy stuff to have. And then a lot of backstory, but it's still pretty succinct. So you don't have to worry about getting too deep into the weeds on knowing all the meta plot and the backstory and the setting details. Kind of don't like to use the word lore. It's a bit, I don't know. It has aspirations. Yeah, okay. So that's the core book. It's really good. And even if it is being superseded by a new Laws of the Night, it's still really good. You might want to have a PDF copy of this, which you can get through DriveThruRPG, because then you can have it on your phone and access it easily. Storytellers, yeah, maybe you want this, or you want one copy of it just to have there and look pretty and stuff like that. So if you're sticking with these rules, then definitely go for it. And then I do want to, in this same review, talk about the supplement they gave me, Vampire the Masquerade MET Volume 2. This is, again, by Night Studios. This is a different by Night Studios in terms of who was behind making it. That doesn't mean anything in terms of quality. It's a really good book, and it includes a lot of extra options that can definitely enhance your games. Some of the bits I really like, they do kind of touch on some of the V5 stuff, but there is a V5 book. So this is not the one to really bring your game into that setting. But they have some alternate bloodlines, the Anda for the Gangrel, there's the Bratovich for the Jamisi, however you pronounce it, but I'll just say whatever I feel like. The Corsairs for the La Sombra, which I love because I love La Sombra, but it might be tricky if you're not coastal. The Creeps for the Nosferatu, and then the Lianen. I believe they're independent, and I believe they're Gangrel. Where's anything specifically saying that? Doesn't really matter. But they're like the druidy types that showed up in Vampire of the Dark Ages in the Companion, I believe. Ah, yes, the Nagaraja or Nagaraja. The cannibal, flesh-eating necromancers, which we need more of always. So you got those options, which is great to have those in there. There are new disciplines and new techniques that pop up as well. And I liked how they all read. You got Spiritus for the Aramanes. They were the Gangrel one. I've skipped those before. Sorry, they're in there's a bloodline. And it involves dealing with spirits in a chronicle without being a werewolf game or a mage game. What else? Techniques, which are the discipline, like combo disciplines. So the Catch a Whiff of Madness is Dementation and Auspex. There's one kineticism here, which it's a caitiff discipline. And I don't have... this is the one I'm not entirely sure. This is basically you accumulate kinetic energy during combat, and it becomes a charge. And then you can spend the charges on things like discharging energy into them to propel them in a certain direction, or reducing the impact of a blow against you. And these are all fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't get it in terms of there's already fortitude, potence, and celerity. And it's nice for the caitiff to have a discipline, I guess. But I'm not positive I would always include it. I guess I probably wouldn't say no if somebody had it, but I just don't immediately think it fits in. But that's fine. Again, your MET can vary, and this is not mandatory to have. Okay. There's a lot more blood magic in here, from abyss mysticism to rituals for abyss mysticism to more necromancy, number of different paths, partly because you have the Nagaraja in here, but then you've also got, it's always nice to have more paths. I mean, to be honest, you can only accumulate so many in one game, so I guess this is a reason to keep playing necromancers and thaumaturgists, again and again. And there are some good ones here. Throne of the Undead Heart. It grows a tree that, when you cut stakes from it, makes them easier to wield, because you get a penalty when you're trying to stake somebody, but here's a much, much lesser penalty, which is cool. Like that one. You can create a Hand of Glory. The Hand of Glory puts everyone to sleep. That's not everybody. Obviously, supernaturals are a bit of an exception to this. Get the green path for thaumaturgy. A couple of other ones. Neptune's Might. I always like that one. Again, probably better if you're in a place with a lot of water. In Ottawa, we would have had to make sure our characters were standing next to one of the rivers or the canal to, make use of a lot of it, or just turn on all the taps. Coldinic Sorcery, yay. There are more Elder powers, so for when you want to run an Elder's game, you've got the disciplines at level 6 and higher. Melpomene. Melpomene, I'm really only especially noting because I have a Daughter of Cacophony in one of my games right now. Then, so you got those expanded disciplines. It's great. Again, this supplements the core book, so it does include things like Melpomene, Temporis, Vicissitude, Visceratica, the gargoyle one. So if you want to run a gargoyles game, you got that. So it is all there. More merits and flaws. The Bali are introduced. Hooray! Demon vampires. I don't say that with a sarcastic. I like the Bali. They are present in that said vampire game. Alternate clan flaws. So things like the Tremere curse is stronger in you if you're an Assamite than your fellows, or a follower of Set that actually has serpentine physiology. Bruja who are coldly logical. Oh, who do those sound like? And so on. So, aerial combat maneuvers is one of the core rule updates and additions. It's good if you got gargoyles in your game or vampires that can fly. They brought in the blood resonance ideas from V5. This is the concept of humors and how those will affect vampires feeding on people with an imbalance in said humors. Which is fun. Why not include it if you want to? Optional rules on feeding territories and things like that. So it is a good book. There are some elements that I'm a little, not sold on, or at least I guess not sold on, because I was like, well, I don't know that I would need kineticism, but it's there. I guess I'd allow it if someone was really set on it, because everyone should have fun with their characters. But it's a good supplementary book. It's definitely a good addition to the system, and worth picking up when you want to add in a few more offbeat things, or if you get a whole bunch of elders in your game, all of a sudden you need a lot of disciplines at high levels. So this has been a review of Vampire the Masquerade MET Core and V2, the supplement, as well as some of the swag from By Night Studios. You can definitely go check it out at their website. They have some really cool stuff. It's a great and easy place to get costuming things, right? And the rules are solid. They've been around for long enough. And then maybe if they aren't to your taste, check out what they're doing with the new Laws of the Night. It might be more so. So for the Tabletop Almanac, which is me, I have been and remain Simon. So until next time, be well and treat everyone nicely, and don't be horrible. And if you're LARPing, help everyone have fun. your storytellers will thank you for it. So until next time.